Okay, we're here with Charles Ticciaro. He's the director of the Owlshead Transportation Museum. We're here with so many things to photograph. I don't even know where to start, but I wanted to start because we talk about fire trucks and fire stations and stuff. And this fire truck, Charlie, is a 1904 engine, right? This is a steam engine.
Keep going. You want a job?
And it's combined with a 1918 fire truck. Tell us a little bit about Andy Swift. I mean, he's an amazing character.
First of all, let's bless the fire departments of Maine and coastal Maine.
Right.
I mean, we can't speak enough praises for what they do.
Yes, that's true.
But it all started years ago when when we had pumpers that were operated by people,
right, and
we're going
to see one.
Yeah, we'll see one. But the key is what we have behind us. Andy Swift lives up in Hope, Maine. He restores. He's one of the finest, if not the finest, restorer of steam fire engines, regular fire engines. He does work for all types of people around the world. Mm-hmm. In a chicken barn, but a sophisticated one in Hope, Maine.
Hope, Maine, right.
And so around us in our various counties on the coast, what a treasure trove of resources we have. Mm-hmm. Behind us, as you just mentioned, the dates is a combination of an American LaFrance, I believe, steam pumper right here, which was originally horse-drawn. That's what they look like.
Right.
But then all of a sudden the gas engine came out and was sophisticated, and American LaFrance took their front end, married it to the old steam pumpers. Mm-hmm. When the fire whistle blew, the fireman stood on the back, threw the match in on the way to the fire. The fire then was boiling the water like when you cook lobsters at that time at the inn there. Mm-hmm. Boiled the water. Takes 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden they got to the fire and they could squirt the water from the pressure of the steam engine pumps. Mm-hmm. So
because this dome builds up your pressure, so the hose.
This is a boiler. This is a teak pot right here.
Right.
And it builds up pressure, and then it turns this pump, which I can't turn because I'm not strong enough. Mm-hmm. And this turns, and here are pumping pistons, and a hose hooks to this. That's suction. This is output, and they squirt just like they have done recently locally, and done a great job, not only saving lives but saving buildings.
And the workmanship is unsurpassed. I mean,
it's the finest in the world. It's the finest in the world. Luckily, we have it on loan here at this museum. It's not ours. Right. It belongs to a gentleman named Bill Ruger. I can say his name, and he is a real lover of fire engines and lives here in Maine in the summer. But what we have behind us and what we're talking about today is ingenuity, not ingenuity. Ingenuity, where especially in Maine, I feel people were able to come up with concepts by using things that we use like a spoon to eat with to do a million things. Ingenuity. And here they combine early technology and modern technology and came up with a transitional vehicle.
What I'd like to do is go over to this one over here, this real old-timer that's in the back, and which was like turn of the century. I think horse-drawn, only set up for horses. I believe.
Right.
And so, Mike, now Charlie and I, this is even older. This is before 1900.
This is really salt of the earth.
Right. So this is how it worked, right, Charles?
You had a number of people, probably 8 on each side. This is human-powered.
Right.
As we're doing this, inside this square box are 2 pumps, just like a pitcher pump in the old days, like on Damerscott Lake.
Right.
You'd have to pump your own water, or at the farm.
Right.
And this would pump water, and this would hold water in here, and it would pump water and put out the fire.
Right.
These were known as water witches, and many of our historical societies in Knox and Lincoln County have examples, like Waldoboro has many of these in their collection. No, they never lost the human power before we actually had steam.
But it actually got brought to the site either by horse or human power.
Well, mostly brought to the site by horse, I believe, and they never lost a foundation.
This is great.
Fighting fires is a great, we could have just a fire museum. There's such a love of that.
What's behind you? I mean, that's an interesting thing.
Well, behind me, this was just given to us. I don't know the maker's name. It's the same with the one we just demonstrated.
Right.
But this is a water wagon.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is not fire.
Right.
But it could be. It
Right.
could have been, but if they didn't have a hose to throw in the brook, like to, you know, or to throw in the Damerscotta River.
Right.
The key is, this is a water wagon, I believe, was used, that was hauled behind a steamroller that went down Main Street of Damerscotta, possibly, and this was hauled behind it by a horse. So when you had to put water in the boiler, you would use this right here. Or maybe this was used for the dirt roads, which they used to
keep the dust down, maybe?
With water, not oil, water.
Right.
And this is so original, we would never restore it.
Right.
You would conserve this, which is much harder.
Right.
And this just was given to us. We were just given 40 horse-drawn vehicles.
Now, Charlie, come over here.
I'm coming over.
This, Mike, right here. Now this
is mine. I own this thing.
This is.
I know all about this.
So you're gonna get? Will Andy take care of this, or we're gonna leave it the way it is?
No, this is a. First of all, you know, can I walk around this side over here? Because this is the side you want to get a picture of right
here.
This
is quite an interesting little apparatus. What is this, Charlie?
This is very exciting for Charlie, and I'm very fortunate that my committee, or my trustee, my bosses, let me keep this here. I've owned this for 20 years. When I was 13, I went to the Henry Ford Museum with my father in the 48 Chevy and Mom, and I was this big, and I looked up at it, maybe that big and this big around, and I took a picture with my Brownie camera, and I still got that picture because I love the brass and I love steam engines. Long story short, when I got the job here when I was 25 years old in 1976, they sent me out there to look at some cars, and I went to look for this. It was gone. And it took me years to find out they had traded it with a man and ended up in Georgia. I then acquired it by selling all my guitars and everything I had, and because I
You wanted this.
I wanted this back because this is a portable steam engine that was built in France that you put wood inside of here, the boiler, and you put water in there just like a lobster pot, and you build up pressure, and not running pumps, but we actually run like a train engine. And it turns this wheel. So in Damerscotta, they didn't use too many portable engines, but Sheepscot, they had a steam mill. In Damerscotta, they had steam mills. In Bristol, so they would put a belt around here, go into a sawmill, or different appliance, but usually a sawmill. You could pump water with this or whatever. It was horse-drawn by 2 horses. You took the motor to the woods. And this is portable. Now, what's exciting about this is Henry Ford did own this at one time. He acquired it for the Edison Institute in 1927. He was building that for Tommy Edison, who was not well. That's where we had the Ford Museum start. The point is, yes, they did part with it, they traded it, but Henry Ford himself really wanted this from the firm in France. And they wouldn't sell it. They finally gave it to him, and it came over on an ocean liner and was put there. So eventually they put on these a rod here to here, and then what did you have? You had a locomobile, or a car, not a car, but you had a motorized vehicle.
Concept.
Same thing with the steam fire engine. So by putting a crank on there, all you have to do is build a fire, and we still run this. We demonstrate it for the kids here at the museum. In fact, everything runs at this museum except for about 8, 9 items that are so rare that we would never fly the Wright Flyer, and we make those distinctions. But our mission is to not only have shows and to collect, but to demonstrate. Why? So we appreciate what you're driving today. What are you driving, Bobby?
Well, today I'm driving a Jeep.
A Jeep. There's nothing like the technology in a Jeep. People say, well, the Duesenberg is better. No, it may look better, but you never have to, well, maybe your Jeep you have to lift the hood.
Speaking of shows, if you go on the website for the Owlshead Transportation Museum, they have a list of shows that just are, you know, the versatility of these shows is just unbelievable.
There's 15 shows this summer.
Right, and you got the, you got the air show, August 6th.
Oh, that's a biggie.
I mean,
with
military
aircraft. But coming up, we have a kite festival coming up in April of this year. We just had the model festival this weekend, and then it goes, you can read them right here.
Right, we just went to Bob's Kites, And right on Route 1 in Noblesboro.
Right.
So anyway, you got a kite festival.
Yeah.
But look at this. I mean, when I'm trying to think about what I want to do next, all I have to do is look next
Well,
to.
each one is a museum.
I mean,
in
this is
itself.
like we're pulling the stagecoach up here, right, Charlie? Right up to the saloon.
But every town, most towns had a Concord coach. This was used in Portland, Maine. And up here, it said the something house up on the top.
Oh, yeah.
And this is original, not restored, but we have stabilized it. We will not paint
So if a
this.
lodging facility like the Mill Pond Inn needed transportation to transport their guests, this is something.
They would, yes, either they, came by steamboat or whatever from the top of the lake. This is unrestored and it looks like it's, something that came out of a barn. But this was built in New Hampshire by Abbott and Downing. In the movies, you see them out west with, the coach, but that's the western, which is almost a third larger. This is eastern. The Samoset had one. All the major hotels had one to get people from where? From
the boat or the train to the facility.
To the facility and back, a Concord coach. So we leave this original.
Right.
And often I think we have one in storage, a restored one. So it's wonderful to look at a video versus a snapshot.
This is fantastic. We're going to go see the most amazing bicycle demonstration right now that you've ever seen. All right, so Charlie was telling me what year this is a bicycle. I mean, the nickname Bone Shaker. Can you imagine riding this down Main Street, Damascus? I mean, you'd be pummeled by the time you.
Well, first of all, there were no roads. They were horse trails, and they were full of pollution called horse manure.
Right.
And they in the streets in New York City, they shoveled 9.5 million pounds of horse manure off those streets every day.
Where'd it go?
Something like that. But anyway, probably in the river, but I'm not going to say that.
Right.
Pollution was horse manure. But in Damascus, or going down Old Route, the Post Road, you would ride this bike in 1860s, and it would shake, and they called them bone breakers and bone shakers. Because
so this wheel is wood, and it's got a metal band around it,
just like a
wagon wheel,
a stagecoach that we looked at. The brake is right here. You turn this, and it pulls up on this piece of leather and pulls down and rubs friction right on there.
Unbelievable.
And these were also, if you were living in 1860s, you would go to Portland, Maine, or Bath. They had an indoor wooden track, and you would get dressed up in your finest Sunday clothes and go to a social event to ride your bikes on a wooden track. So it wasn't just like we do today.
Wow.
But bicycles haven't changed much. And this is what we call a bone shaker. When you pedal this, the pedals do not idle, so they keep turning. So if you went down the Waldoboro Hill,
you had to lift your foot.
I know, but how do you get your feet back on?
Oh.
Because they're spinning around with these big acorn weights right here, and they're big bone breaker, bone shaker.
Now we had some people, even people back then were lazy, so then they wanted to.
Well, a man named Roper, about in 1850s, started the design of a bone shaker and bone breaker, we call them. But what did he do? He put a steam boiler, like a tea kettle, underneath your posterior when you were sitting here, and it was fed with coal and would boil water. And when it boiled water, it made steam.
Right.
And the seat, which is going to be covered with leather, it would carry extra water, and this would be hot. So and between your legs, you had the boiler.
Maybe that's how they came up with the hot seat.
That's where they came out with heated seats. And then here are the steam engines in the back that turn the rear wheel. And so we built this from scratch. We first went to the Smithsonian, and Roper's original bike is there, the only one in the world. And we took and we blueprinted it, copied it, brought it to here, and our volunteers, many that live in Lincoln County and thereabouts, work here on Thursdays, and they created this, and we're still working on it. But we demonstrate this at events right now on a stand.
And here's you got your exhaust.
This is the exhaust right behind your back, and the coal dust gets all over your hair. And was it successful? It went about 20 miles an hour, but it never caught on. It was way ahead of its time in 1860s. It was the beginning of what? The motor cycle. Just like behind us, one of the first motor cycles. Look at this bicycle.
Step back a little, Charlie. Mike
Yeah, I'm going to move my big body on the other side over here, and that right here
is a Steffi.
The Steffi, which is turn of the century, which in the Steffi is 1901, before the Wright brothers flew, and they put this one-cylinder gasoline motor, not steam, in a more modern bicycle. By then, there was no carbon in the tires. They were white. They only lasted a few miles without getting a flat tire.
I recently was at the Wright Brothers Museum and unbelievably found out that the Wright brothers were bicycle guys.
Oh, yes, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Up here at the museum, you can actually see a replica we built full-size of the Wright Flyer.
Right. So anyway, Mike's gonna shift his camera around. We're gonna talk briefly about this. And like I say, it's just wherever you look, there's another picture. But anyway, we're going to step over here, speaking of the Wright brothers.
Keep in mind, if you have the time and if you want.
So I was telling Charlie that I was just down at the Wright Brothers Museum, and this replica looks just like the one that was down there. And that's one of the Wright brothers. He actually was laying on the plane, and he controlled that back flap, which controlled where. And so anyway, the amazing thing to me was, and Charlie just confirmed it, it was 65 years from this to Man on the Moon, which is amazing. That's an amazing accomplishment, 65 years.
And how many years ago was 1903 when they flew in December? If we do the math, and I'm not good at math, but if we do some simple math, 1903 to 2011, that's not many years.
Not.
That's 90. Well, anyway, you know, you do the math right there. So only a few decades ago, the age of my father, they are a little bit more than that. They flew 120 feet, and then they told the world about it, and that meant success. And then there was no future for airplanes. No way. They took their planes to Europe. Then finally, World War I, they used planes for observation. This is a replica. We built this like we built the Roper by going to the Smithsonian and getting blueprints of the original Wright Flyer that hangs from the ceiling at the Air and Space Museum. And our volunteers, many from Lincoln County in the town of, especially the town of New Harbor, they carved the struts. And Mac Rogers, he did the propellers with Bill Hanna.
These all move. These all move and move this ring.
This whole thing, he moved his hips like the birds do to walk the wings in that cradle. And they were trying to copy nature. And they flew it. Grandmother, who read the newspaper 4 weeks later, she said, those boys are crazy. They're yuppies trying to fly like the birds. There's no future. She didn't believe there was going to be ever a future in flying.
And Mike, can you pan up on the ceiling to your left? And Charlie will tell us a little bit about this. And that wasn't too many more years later, we had this.
Yes, just about 10 years after the Wright brothers built what you just saw and flew at Kitty Hawk, we have a monowing airplane built for World War I by the French called a Depredussin, which we do fly here at the museum, but presently it's hanging from, as you see. But look at that design. That is very similar to a modern day airplane, only 10 years after the Wright brothers. So things evolved very quickly.
Wow, these people wanted to fly, and they wanted to fly.
They wanted to fly, and they wanted to fly to overcome adversity or to, when the war started, World War I, there were no guns on the planes. They flew to look down for observation. And then all of a sudden someone brought a pistol, and then started the air war. And look at, and here we are today with a whole incredible technology, only a lifetime away from when this all began. Again, my dad's 92, but you know, there are people that have experienced much of this evolution, and you can experience all of it here at the Owlshead Museum.
It's unbelievable. We're gonna go into another room, just take a quick pan of the amount of planes here, but the stuff here is just unbelievable. So the Owlshead Museum is right on, go Route 1 north out of Damariscotta and follow the sign
you're going to fly a plane next. All right? We're
gonna talk to Mrs. Wellman, because Mrs. Wellman,
well,
she's
a whole nother
story.
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah. Margaret Wellman from your area is amazing.
Yeah.
But I'd like to put you in the Curtis Pusher airplane, assuming I can find it, and give you a flying lesson.
Okay. This right here, Charlie tells me, and I'm looking at the name, it's a 1912 Woods. And you're talking electric cars. They were way ahead of their time.
Well, in 1912, we had about 300 makers of hybrid cars, but we had pure electric cars. This was used in Boston, Massachusetts. You took it into Filene's. Well, I don't know if Filene's existed. I'm using that as an example. You parked it at the electric car garage on Tremont Street, and they would charge your batteries while you went in to go shopping, and then you went back to Brookline.
Right.
Electric cars are nothing new. They're more sophisticated. This went roughly 30 miles before it had to be charged.
Well, from Brookline to Boston was only 5 or 6 miles.
We're going to leave the hood up on that right there.
Wow, this
I don't know how to close it. But that was typically driven by women and doctors. And they all wore big hats, the women, and their friends faced them as the driver as she drove, and I don't know how they ever saw what they were doing.
Oh my God.
Absolutely wonderful.
Wow, that's a party car, the first party car ever invented.
Look at the flowers in the vase. Your people won't be able to see them, but they're flowers in the vase that someone would put in each day. Fresh flowers.
That ceiling has more headroom than any.
Because of the hats that used to stand up in there to get in and out. Here at the museum, we have electric, steam, gasoline, human-powered vehicles, and we show energy in all different forms that propelled us.
Tell us a little bit about the number of volunteers that it takes to put this.
Well,
it's
there
incredible.
are 200 right now, 250 volunteers from all over, not just Maine, but the majority are from Maine. Mostly retired people, but we have some 13-year-olds too. Some come here an hour a week and work in the library. Everyone thinks that they're turning wrenches or they're pilots. Very few volunteers have ever owned an old car or flown or had an old plane. They work in all different areas. There's several from Damascata.
The beauty of a place like this, the volunteers, they see something they like and they're infatuated with it, they can get right into it.
Here they can sponsor, for instance, this, not only keep it clean, but learn to drive it and demonstrate it at the events, not having to own a car to take pride of ownership. But the biggest thing our volunteers, and I'm writing an article right now for our next newsletter, when we ask them why they are here, yes, to be around the old things and the old planes, but they see the smiles on the faces of the children and adults that come here. And that's an instant reward.
That's what it's all about.
I've been here 36 years,
That's what it's all about.
All about.
Well, we're going to go see some airplanes. You're not going to believe these airplanes. This is the Red Baron himself going to be here.
Yeah, I might put you in an airplane too.
All right.
I might put you in an airplane.
You know me, Charlie. I'm game for anything.
I know you.
There's
yes,
so many
I do.
things here. It's just, there are so many things there. So this is the largest motorcycle in the world, built in 1913. And for all you bikers, this is, you know, it's a car, but it's set up like a motorcycle. And then the car of the future, Charlie, what are we talking over there?
During the 1930s, Bucky Fuller and Sam Elliott built a car, almost looked Buck Rogers looking car of the future, thinking someday we'd go into outer space. So it looks like a Sputnik combined with what we call the soccer car or the van. And it was powered, they experimented with steam and gas engines, and it has air. Move the steering yoke. Go ahead forward, Bobby. Move, that's the tail, that's exhaust.
Yeah.
Move forward and move the yoke. When you pushed forward, the brakes went on. So they thought if you were going to hit a tree.
This was the start of the handicapped vehicle.
Well, it was a challenge vehicle, yes.
Yeah.
And so the museum, it's not only success stories. We have all types of, I'm not going to say failures, but all types of evolutionary, like the turkey feather covered ornithopter.
Yeah, we're heading over there
one.
next. Charlie says they're going to put solar panels up here.
Solar panels and electric motor to demonstrate to the kids. We're just carry on the tradition of Bucky Fuller and Sam Elliott in experimentation.
Let's go see some turkey feathers. Oh, this is a turkey story, Charlie, right?
Well, it's a turkey story, but before the Wright brothers flew, people tried to defy gravity. And the man who built this, it's an original, the only one, the Smithsonian doesn't even have an original ornithopter, a device that flapped its wings and had turkey feathers woven between chicken wire, because a turkey feather acts and gives lift, like to the turkey or any bird. And he thought by starting this newly developed gasoline engine, flapping these wings, that he could defy, not fly, not go from here to Nobleboro, but that he could defy gravity and go up. He did.
He did go up.
Oh, he thrashed around and it broke the frame, and there's a C-clamp down there
I see it.
on the frame. So did it really fly? No. Did it thrash around? Yes. Was it a mistake? Not a mistake, but was it successful? No. Did it lead to something else? Yes. So the museum's about innovation, ingenuity, and excitement.
And collecting turkey feathers from Warren, Maine.
From Warren, Maine, the turkey farm on Route 1.
Right. Okay, so we got a couple MGs here, Charlie. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Well, you know, Bobby, it's exciting. The phone rang, and we were told that we're receiving the loan and then donation of 27 MGs that were here, not in Gardner, Maine.
Oh my
and
God.
They are going to be on exhibit with microcars starting at the end of May. Memorial Day is when we open the exhibit. And here's a 1937 MG behind me, and there's not just the typical ones.
But the museum itself has 27.
They're going to be given to the museum, and we're also going to have these on display up in the north wing with microcars, miniature cars that were very fuel efficient.
Wow.
So there's always something new here.
Right. Well, you talk about planes. We might as well start with the Red Baron, right, Charlie?
Well, the Red Baron's airplane was built in 1917, World War I, only a few years ago. And they flew at first without guns, just to look down and see where the enemy was, then fly reconnaissance.
Right.
Then finally someone put a deer rifle on the top, and the bullets would come out and hit the propeller and put a hole through it. They got smart. They put metal, which ricocheted the bullets and did what to the pilot?
Hurt him.
Hurt him. Okay, not good, but Red Baron, Baron von Richthofen, he was a German ace. He flew a three-winged airplane built by a Dutchman named Tony Fokker, and Tony sold this idea to the Germans, which gave it much more maneuverability. It was the first airplane to have synchronized machine guns.
Now, was he flying and shooting the gun at the same time?
Oh, yes. You would aim the airplane with a stick like this. You'd reach up. You would get behind, or he would get above with the sun behind him, and aim down at the young 15-year-old Frenchman flying the Newport over there and go bam. And the bullets at first, some of them would get through and not hit his propeller. And that'd be the end of that person.
So this guy's fighting against the Newport. So let's go see the Newport.
Right. Well, it's down the pike here a little bit. Right there's that's the SPAD or the Newport. That's the Newport.
Right here?
Yeah.
Wow. Look at that. Look at that emblem. So here we are. Now, the Red Baron is fighting against the French, right? And
The French, the British, and the Americans, and others, but the Germans, World War I now.
Yeah.
So this is a Newport, and this was made famous by Roland Garros, a young boy who took his daddy's deer rifle at first and put it on top to counteract the Red Baron, and was pretty successful. And he did not synchronize the gun, so they would bounce off the propeller, not always hitting him.
How young are we talking? How old?
The young pilots in World War I were 15, 16, up to 18 years old on average. They had a life expectancy of under 27 hours. The motors in these aircraft, the original rotary engines, had a life expectancy of about the same, maybe 30 hours before rebuild. And they burned they lubricated with castor oil.
They really had to keep track of how long they've been flying.
Well, they kept track. Yes, they did, but they were often inhaling so much castor oil, and we're not going to get into what castor oil does to you when you inhale it. But these poor guys also drank a little bit of orange juice or brandy or whatever to counteract the effects of too much castor oil when you're in the air.
Oh, wow. Okay, time for one more. What do we got here, Charles?
Yes, Eddie Rickenbacker flew the famous SPAD and started the Hat in the Ring Squadron. Was the famous Hat in the Ring. You can see the logo on the back of this airplane if you have it on the camera.
Yeah.
But this is very similar to the Newport, and this plane right here was also a French airplane, and it was also known as one of the Lafayette Escadrille aircraft that flew against the Germans. And don't forget, a little promotion here too. You can take a biplane ride here at the Owlshead Museum now. We are offering rides, really, and it's a very successful program to go flying over the coast and mountains and lobster fishermen and the swordfish. Wait a minute, not swordfishermen.
Right.
But the point is, yes, you can do that and give a present to someone in a biplane ride. But anyway, yes, very exciting. We focus on the early aircraft specifically. We do bring in military planes, World War II and jet era, at our shows in the summer. But it's important to show where it started.
So we're in front of a more modern aircraft than the museum is specializing in.
This is known as a Super Cub, commonly known to people as a J3 Cub, which most of our pilots in Maine learned to fly on.
Right.
And fly with, and Arthur Harjula taught. And this is a modern airplane. We use it for ride giving and reconnaissance to make sure we have good weather before we fly the early aircraft. So someone gave us this. But you know what's important? I believe across from the inn is a big mill building, and Hollis Nelson used to have his many different entrepreneur things going on there.
We had a lot of things going on.
He had one of these, a similar one, on floats, and would fly off of Damerscottle Lake, as many people did. And people such as Margaret Wellman and others, they flew many hours in these J3 Cubs, and many people went on to become airline pilots that learned with the great early people in Maine flying these.
Speaking of Margaret Wellman, we met Margaret Wellman at the North Noblesboro Christmas Bazaar.
She's amazing.
And she's 77 years old. She flies planes all the time. She offered to take us for a plane ride, and now I think I've confirmed myself. I'd love to go on a plane ride.
Well, you got a plane ride here anytime for the great job you do with, I watch your show all the time.
Right.
And not because you're here. We have such great resources that you talk about, varied resources, and we want to promote that and make people proud of the great coast of Maine. And that's what the museum tries to do.
Well, we love going to places just like this. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yep.